Thank you, Chairpersons. So good afternoon. So I'm going to deal with two papers, and the first one is the weekly versus every three weekly paclitaxel and carboplatin in ovarian cancer, presented by J.K. Chan et al. And published in NEJM in February 2016. So the background of this study goes that a dose-dense scheduling of paclitaxel will obviously result in greater frequency of the drug delivery, and when given along with carboplatin every 3 weeks, or the addition of bevacizumab to paclitaxel or carboplatin, either of these measures has shown efficacy and improved survival in ovarian cancer. For example, in the Japanese JGOG study, they found that the dose-dense weekly paclitaxel prolonged progression-free survival and overall survival as compared with the conventional 3-weekly regime. But in an Italian multi-center study, the investigators did not find the benefit of weekly therapy over treatment administered every 3 weeks. However, the criticism for this trial was that paclitaxel was not administered in the real dose-dense schedule. So this study was proposed to determine whether the dose-dense weekly paclitaxel and carboplatin would improve the PFS as compared with the conventional 3-weekly pacli-carbo. Interestingly, in patients whether they were receiving bevacizumab or not. So the study design was an open-label randomized phase 3 trial for GOG 262. The regimen 1 was the classical paclitaxel administered 175 mg per meter squared over 3 hours on day 1, and carboplatin AUC 6 day 1 every 21 day cycle. That's the classical cycle. And the regimen 2 was the dose-dense arm, where the paclitaxel IV was given 80 mg per meter squared over 1 hour on day 1, 8 and 15 of a 21 day cycle, and carbo AUC 6 was delivered on day 1. Meanwhile, the GOG 218, which was alluded upon by the earlier speaker, has shown that the addition of bevacizumab had increased PFS significantly, and hence this study was amended, and it was offered to the patient to have bevacizumab or not. So it was a prospective stratification and not a proper randomization, and then the patients, after the prospective stratification, whether they will receive bevacizumab or not, were randomly assigned to receive either the dose-dense schedule or the classical pacli-carbo schedule. This is the plot where we can see that 692 patients were enrolled, and 346 were in the dose-dense and the classical arm. And finally, 346 patients were analyzed in the efficacy analysis in both the arms, and there was 256 events, that is disease progression, in the study arm, and 272 events in the 3-weekly arm. The deaths were 110 in the study arm and 116 in the conventional pacli-carbo arm. When we look at the patient and disease characteristics, it's again interesting. There was a stage 3 tumor in approximately 70% of the patients, and majority were primary ovarian tumor. 63% of the patients had macroscopic or gross residual disease after surgery, and 88% was serous histology. Interestingly, bevacizumab was given in 84% of the patient subgroup, that is 580 patients received bevacizumab in this study. And again, as per the Western practice, you can see that only 13% patients actually had neoadjuvant therapy, although that was allowed. And in that arm, in the neoadjuvant arm, bevacizumab was given in the 1, 2, 4 and 6 cycles. So when you look at the results, if you look at the intention to treat analysis, the dose-dense weekly therapy with paclitaxel did not prolong progression-free survival as compared to the classical arm, and that was 14.7 and 14 months. So it was a negative study. But in the overall intention to treat analysis, again, it did not improve the overall survival. But again, the interesting subgroup analysis that was done, which showed that PFS among patients who opted not to receive bevacizumab, the weekly paclitaxel was associated with significant higher PFS of 3.9 months compared to the 3-weekly paclitaxel, that was 14.2 versus 10.3 months. And in patients who actually went on to receive bevacizumab, weekly paclitaxel did not have an impact. So the PFS was almost same, 14.9 and 14.7 months if the patients received bevacizumab. Coming to the adverse events, anemia of grade 3 or higher was significantly seen in the weekly dose-dense regimen. That was almost 36% compared to 16%, which is statistically significant. you had reduced neutropenia, that is grade 3 or higher, occurred less in the weekly paclitaxel regimen. So that was again 72 versus 83%, again statistically significant. More patients in the weekly paclitaxel obviously had more grade 3 or more sensory neuropathy. And the death associated to study drug was almost equal in both the groups. So there was no increased death associated in the study arm. So if you look at the discussion associated with the study, the greater number of infusion and longer duration of paclitaxel exposure with dose-dense regimen at least theoretically should enhance intratumoral drug infusion and inhibit angiogenesis. And this was shown in the JGOG study, as I previously mentioned, where they could demonstrate significant improvement in PFS and overall survival. The results of this study suggested that the weekly paclitaxel actually may have a different effect on patients who do not receive bevacizumab. But then the non-randomization of bevacizumab is the major criticism for this study, because it may have allowed unknown biases for the patients who opted to receive bevacizumab, and which we will never come to know. Overall, weekly paclitaxel as compared with the classical 3-weekly paclitaxel did not prolong progression-free survival among patients with ovarian cancer in this study. Coming to my second paper, that is the prognostic and predictive biomarkers in patients with advanced epithelial ovarian cancer treated with pacli-carbo plus or minus bev, that is the results from the GOG 218 trial. So this was a double-blind placebo-controlled phase 3 trial, again alluded by the previous speaker, which compared pacli-carbo with the addition of bevacizumab during chemotherapy or prolonged bevacizumab as maintenance. Study result demonstrated significantly improved PFS, but no overall survival benefit with bevacizumab. And this is the trial summary, where there was an improved PFS in the arm where the bevacizumab 15 was given for 15 months. So this study actually analyzed looking at the candidate biomarkers. There was a IL-6, ANG2, osteopontin, stromal cell-derived factor, and VEGF-D, and whether the association of these biomarker baseline value and their correlation with PFS and OS were looked at with appropriate statistical analysis. The covariates looked at were age, stage, debulking status, and performance status. And again, predictive markers were identified using marker interaction term in a continuous variable by using a multivariate Cox analysis. The primary objective of this biomarker study was to determine whether the components of the plasma angiome panel are predictive of PFS in patients who receive bevacizumab in advanced ovarian cancer. The secondary objective was to look at whether there was an impact on overall survival based on these biomarkers. And exploratory objective looked at whether components of these plasma angiome panel are prognostic for PFS and OS in women with advanced ovarian cancer who are going to get bevacizumab or not. So if you look at the predictive association, you can see among the panel only the IL-6 turned out to be significantly statistically significant to have a predictive value in patients who is going to receive bevacizumab, that is in PFS as well as OS. When you look at the prognostic association, both IL-6 and OPN has a negative prognostic association as far as advanced ovarian cancer is concerned, who is going to receive bevacizumab. The IL-6 data was exciting, because if you look at the values and less than the median and more than the median, you can see that higher the median, then there was of the IL-6 values, there was significant improvement in PFS and overall survival, thereby looking at the inflammatory background of the tumor and response to bevacizumab. So this showed that the increasing IL-6 level were associated with greater benefit from bevacizumab with statistical significance. So the conclusion from this study is the inflammatory cytokine IL-6 is highly predictive of therapeutic benefit from bevacizumab when combined with pacli-carbo. And plasma IL-6 may define those ovarian cancer patient who is more likely to benefit from the addition of bevacizumab to standard therapy. So it's one of the emerging biomarker, and these data are consistent with the previous findings of IL-6 reported as far as bevacizumab and pazopanib in renal cell cancer, and highlights the importance of inflammation in ovarian and renal cancers. The take-home message from the two papers that I presented. The weekly dose-dense paclitaxel shall improve progression-free survival in patients with advanced epithelial ovarian cancer if you are not using bevacizumab in your program. So it may be a practical alternative to a costly therapy in our setting. But then watch out for anemia and neuropathy, which is more in the weekly arm, and expect less neutropenia in the weekly program compared to the 3-weekly schedule. In the second paper, the biomarker paper, the plasma interleukin 6 may be a potential biomarker to predict the subset of our patients who shall benefit with the addition of bevacizumab in advanced epithelial ovarian cancer, and this again may be practically relevant rather than giving bevacizumab for all. Thank you.